Hi. Have you ever worried that your fantasy world is too similar to another one on the market? If you haven't, why not? Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a writing coach, and I focus on helping writers all over the world find their unique writing voice and tell the story that is important to them. And part of that involves world building. So that is exactly what I'm going to talk to you about today. Hey, if you've ever worried about your world building being too similar to another book on the market, or if you've never worried about it at all, and maybe you're starting to, in today's video, I'm going to tell you 10 things that I do in my writing and that I teach my students to make sure that this doesn't happen. And make sure to stick around for something super special at the end, because I have something that's really going to help you hammer in that world building and make sure that yours stands out and is unique at every step of the process. All right, so here are 10 things that you can do to make sure that your world building is unique to every other piece of writing on the market. The first thing I want to make sure you understand is that there's no such thing as pure originality. So I'm not coming up with an idea that I think has never been done on the market before. What I am doing instead is saying, you know what, I have a lot of ideas, I have a lot of really good ideas, and what I'm going to do is come up with a story that may have been done before, but I'm going to do it in a different way. So in today's video, I'm going to teach you how to do it in that different way. So that way you're not just copy pasting from someone else's work. And you're also writing something that feels authentic and unique to you, which is why we tell stories. So the first thing I want you to make sure you do is to start strong, but don't limit yourself. Your novel is only going to be as interesting as you are interested in it. So if you're coming up with a concept and you're like not super excited about it, or if there's something you are super excited about, but you're not sure if you're going to be able to pull it off, I want you to pay attention to how that feels. Go towards the ideas that make you feel excited. What I tell my students to do is I say, if it gives you that kind of warm, fuzzy feeling inside, or if you kind of want to spend all day thinking about it, that's the thing that I want you to spend your time on. Even if you don't know all the individual pieces of it yet, that doesn't mean that the individual pieces won't show themselves. And through all of the steps in this process that I'm about to teach you, those pieces are going to become more and more relevant as you work through it. So this is going to seem a little bit counterintuitive, but you need to spend time with the work, not necessarily on the work. So I'm not saying writing, although writing is an important part of the process. What I need you to do is to spend time thinking about it and letting these ideas organically come up in your writing. So this is what we call a nurturing routine. It's spending time doing the things that nurture your creative process, whether that's reading a book, watching a movie, listening to music, walking in nature, anything that makes you feel creative or helps you generate ideas. That is what you're going to use to generate a strong concept. And that's also what you're going to use to make sure that your voice and your ideas are unique. The thing is, a lot of people, when they start out writing a story, they don't necessarily want to do this because they think, well, if I spend my time working with other people's work, it just means that I'm going to copy their work. And that's not true. What actually ends up happening is you get ideas from all other types of sources, and then you sort of piecemeal that into something. We call it synthesis, and it becomes a work all on its own. How do I know if my concept is strong enough to justify writing an entire book about it? Well, I like to say that it's a concept that feeds itself. So when a concept starts feeding itself, it generates its own ideas from the work. It opens up new possibilities and causes you to ask questions about it that a weak concept wouldn't have you do. So if you're not sure if your concept is strong enough, ask yourself, could I see me asking lots of questions about this over time? If the answer is no, then it's probably a weak concept and it needs more inspiration or more development. If the answer is yes, then you're on the right path and we can start going through the next 9 steps. All right, so the next thing, step 2, you're going to do is research. I cannot say this enough. Research. So I can already hear you, but Rachel, I don't want my work to sound like anybody else's. It has to be wholly original. No, it doesn't. You are original. You are the person that makes the work unique. Studying other people, studying how they do it, studying their craft, that is not going to result in plagiarism. It's only going to result in plagiarism if you are not willing to do the work to make it unique. So if I'm just going to copy and paste from a popular book like Akatar, then that is going to result in plagiarism. It's going to result in people saying, well, your work is just like XYZ. Why should I like you as opposed to them? But if you're willing to do the research and you're willing to do a lot of it, you're going to generate a lot of strong concepts over time. You're going to feed into step 1, and you're going to create that world that starts feeding itself. Even the greatest works from the most notable people, so musicians, artists, writers, all took their inspiration from somebody else. Like I said earlier, it's not in the originality of the work, it's the originality of you. It is the originality of the person who made it, because only you can tell the story in the way you're going to tell it. The other thing I want you to think about is a really important concept that I actually learned in art. So it's this idea that you learn by copying other painters, and the mistakes that you make while you copy their work become the signature that you create in your work later on. So while you are learning from other writers, artists, musicians, anybody else that you're learning from, while you're learning from me, it's okay to copy for the sake of educational purposes. Don't put it out there and claim that it's your own work. But if you want to say, hey, I learned this technique from so and so, the mistakes you make in doing that technique become your unique voice. So, although we should never plagiarize someone else's work, it's okay to learn from them and to acknowledge that they helped us in the writing process. Okay, so step 3 is to start small. How small? Well, if you read my blog, then you know that I want you to start at the very smallest thing possible. Think about the smallest parts of your world and the impact those things have on the rest of it. So I think a lot about food, diet. Diet reflects trade. Trade reflects economy. Economy affects geography. The small things start to build upon themselves so that it creates a big world and something that you can be super excited to research and then share in the novel that you're writing. When I was in film school, we learned something called mise en scène. And what mise en scène is, it's the backdrop of the set or anything you see that was placed that's not the actor in the set of a movie or a show or a musical. So if you look at my backdrop, if this was a set, unfortunately it's not, this is actually my office, but the set, you could see the mise en scène. So I've got my Star Wars here, I've got a book that I'm reading, I've got a drink that I'm drinking, you see my laptop. All of these things could be considered mise en scène. They were placed there for the purpose of creating interest in the work. So next time you watch a show, I want you to try this exercise. Put it on mute and only look at the background. So look at the coffee cups that are on there, the paintings, the pieces in the set. I want you to look at all these things and think about, why did they put them in the set? What is the emotional response they're trying to generate when they put them on the set? What is it, the depth of the world they're creating when they put these in the background? That is all world building. And so when you write about world building in your story, think about all the little pieces you can place in there just in the background to create the world, or to create, the mise en scène, which we would do if this was a visual medium. When you're starting small, pick one small thing that impacts all of your characters. I usually go with diet because that's the easiest thing. And then build on that. Think about your mise en scène. Think about how it snowballs by affecting all the other parts of your world, and use that to start your world building process. All right, now step 4 is going to be a little bit daunting. I give this to all of my writing students, but they tend to give me the side eye. I'm going to give it to you because it really works. I want you to create a history book. Now, you don't have to actually create this. You don't have to sit down and write down every little piece of your novel the way that Tolkien did or other writers who have these huge anthologies of work. But I do want you to think about, what are these small pieces of history that the average person in your world is going to know? Think about, the little pieces of colloquialisms that they're going to include in their daily lives. Think about the historical pieces that we talk about. We talk about Napoleon a lot, or we talk about recent historical events. What are the basic historical events that your characters would know about just by existing in the world? Write about that. Keep that something in the front of your mind just to create the depth of the world. A lot of mistakes I see newer writers make is they drop the reader in the world as though nothing in the world happened before that point, and then the reader doesn't feel grounded in anything real. So I want you to think about, if you want to write an actual history book, go ahead. If you want to do it just as a thought experiment, that's fine too. But the big question here is, what are the main historical experiences that all of the characters across the globe are going to experience? And make sure that you keep that in the forefront of your mind while you're developing the world. So number 5 is to think about distinct cultures. So another mistake I see a lot of writers make is they have one culture and that applies to the entire scope of their world. That's fine if your world is contained within a small culture of society. So if it's just a little snippet of the world, one unique unified culture is going to be enough. But if you're writing a fantasy novel, that's probably not the case. It's probably actually going to be either an epic or a large scale spanning world. And if that's the case, then you need to come up with different cultures that apply to these different regions. Cultures are usually defined regionally, like I just said. And you need to think about, what things would impact that culture. So we got trade, we've got geography, we've got isolation or incorporation from other groups. Anything that sort of impacts them is going to be their interactions with other people or lack of interaction with other people. So think about your cultures, think about how many they're going to be, think about all of the different things that you're going to need to include to differentiate them from the other cultures in your work, and make sure that you pay attention to the similarities and differences between each culture to make sure they are separate and unique. I've tossed this word around a lot today, but geography is another really important feature. So when I talk to writers, especially my newer writers, geography is often the last thing they think about, but actually it needs to be the first thing you think about. In today's world, we are pretty much okay with traveling just about anywhere. We've got planes, trains, we've got cars, we've got bicycles, we've got things that are walkable. But if you think about it on a super deep level, a lot of how we live our lives is deeply impacted by how we travel. So if you're developing cultures, you're developing food, you're developing trade, all these other parts of your story, geography is actually going to have a really, really big role in how those things develop. So think about where your mountains are, think about where your bodies of water are, think about what are the things your characters or societies or cultures have had to do to adapt to the challenges of traveling over these things. We're going to talk about, weather. How does weather affect the geography? I know in one of the things that I've written, mountains are a big problem because they're snowy most of the year, and so it deeply affects how the characters travel about the world. Think about your geography. If it helps you make a map, or you can go online, there's lots of free places to build maps. Do a lot of research into how current cultures, real people, navigate geography. That's where you need to spend a lot of your time in the early stages of world building. Okay, 6, magic and technology. This is a big topic. It deserves its own video. I promise you I will make one at some point, or maybe 5, depending on how long it takes. But magic and technology is another piece you need to spend a lot of time thinking about, especially when you're researching. So while you're working on step 2, think about step 6 and research all the different ways that technology have played an impact on the world that you're creating. Magic and technology kind of fit hand in hand because technology is just something that we've developed to cope with the struggles and strategies we need in the world. So if your world has magic in it, if it's a fantasy, which is how the video started, but even if it's not, you have to think about these are things that people have developed as tools to navigate obstacles and challenges in their lives. Technology and magic operate the same way. And in that similar vein, you need to make sure that you understand and establish very clear rules and limitations for the magic and technology that you use in your world. So when you are developing magic or technology or both, you need to create a rule system and stick to it. A lot of my students think I'm a bit of a jerk when it comes to this because a lot of writers break this rule and it breaks their story. So please, 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 please don't do this. Rule systems help you. They help make your story believable. They establish credibility between you as the author and your reader, and they make people want to keep reading because limitations are what make people interested in the story. No one cares about the OP character who can do whatever and is never stopped. The only example I could think of that being wrong is One Punch Man, and even then, I'm amazed at how well that story has gone. You need to have things your characters can do and very specific things they can't do. And then how do they navigate that is going to be the interesting piece of your story. So another piece of world building, and this actually just bleeds into real good writing in general, is using sensory details. So in my coaching sessions, I teach my students to use the 5 senses, but you need to make sure that when you're thinking about world building, how does the world affect the 5 or more, if you're a nerd, senses that your characters have? How do they see, taste, touch, feel, smell, hear the world? How do they engage with the world on a daily basis? And remember, this is also deeply impacted by the functions, magic, technology, weather, geography, all of the other things we just talked about deeply affects their sensory reactions to the world around them. There's something really special about sensory details, though, that make world building really fun. You can play with the reader's expectations when it comes to fantasy or non-contemporary works such as sci-fi or dystopian. You can really change it up. The example I like to use a lot is if you have a cat. If your character pets a cat, we as the reader would expect that cat to be soft. But what would happen if your cat was scaly or sticky? How would the reader react? How will the character react? You can play around with those expectations and developing your sensory details, and that will cause intrigue and help you write a world that is fully fleshed out and interesting to your reader. The next thing you need to do, which is step 8, is conflict. So we have character to character conflict. That's a different topic all of its own, but world conflict fits into the world building process. So how does the world interact with itself? Is there weather conflict? Are there conflict between nations? Is there conflict between culture? Is there a stratified society? This is all part of the world building process. Thinking about conflict and how that deeply affects the day-to-day processes and lives of the characters that you're writing about is going to make sure that your world is fully fleshed out, detailed, and again, I've said this 1,000 times, it's interesting. The whole point of this is to not make it some history dump on your reader, but to cause them to ask questions, and then in reading the work, they are searching for the answer to that question and getting a lot of entertainment out of the story. Number 9 seems super self-explanatory, but I would not be a good coach if I didn't mention it. Be consistent. So keep a spreadsheet, keep a notebook, keep sticky notes if you want, but write it down and be consistent. Whatever rules you establish at the beginning, you have to hold at the end. Every now and again, it's okay to break them, but I would say if you're not sure, just don't. Come up with a system that makes sense, use it, stick to it, and your reader will trust you. When your reader trusts you, they will like you. And when they like you, they will finish reading your book. Do not break this rule. A lot of writers think that they can, and then they do, and then I read their manuscript and it stinks. This is a big problem. Listen, your work is interesting. You just need to stick to the rules that you establish early on in the draft, and your reader will be like, whoa, this is a writer who knows what they're doing, and then they're going to want to cheer for you, not only in this book, but in future books. And then 10, you're going to think that this is contradicting everything I just told you, but I promise you, when you get it right, this will make a ton of sense. Keep it mysterious. Okay, before you get mad at me, here's what I mean. Introducing mystery into your story does not mean that you don't know what's going on. It means that strategically throughout the story, you introduce things that are seemingly separate but actually connect. You don't have to explain everything. You can leave some room up for fan theories. I love doing this with my work. I love introducing things that I know make sense, but my readers are going to have to think about to figure out as they're reading the work. And then also over-explaining things can sometimes cause, a little bit of an identity crisis with the reader. They may think, oh, well, this writer thinks I don't trust them, so they're going to over-explain everything. When you learn the cadence of your story and you build it out the way that I just described, then you can choose which pieces to explore thoroughly and which pieces to leave up for mystery. Sometimes you need a little bit of editor or beta reader feedback to figure this out, but do not be afraid to have a little bit of mystery and allow your reader to go, huh? When they're reading. Hey, congratulations on making it all the way to the end of this video. If you've ever had trouble with world building, or if anything I just told you seems super overwhelming, don't worry. I have got something that'll help you. I've put it in the description below, but the Complete Novelist Kit has an entire section of world building tools that will help you develop your story from start to finish. I want to make sure that you grab this, so click that link below and you will get access to the entire program, not just world building, but every other piece in between. So if you've ever had problems with plotting, character development, editing, revising, anything at all with the basic major steps of the writing process, you can get it here. You can click the link. It'll take you to a page that will explain everything that's inside, and I will walk you through the method I use step by step with my students to create their masterpieces. I really hope that you check this resource out. It has helped so many people, and it's going to help you too. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you decided to spend your valuable time with me today. I hope you hit that subscribe button. Comment down below what I should cover next time, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks, guys. Bye.